Hello, my elegant warriors. Welcome back to the Elegant Warrior podcast. And this season is called How to Advocate with Heather Hansen. I am going to teach you all of the tools so that you can become your own best advocate, which means that you will be able to advocate for your products and your services if you're in sales. You'll be able to advocate for your team or the change that you want to institute or the innovation that you want to promote if you are a leader. It means that as an individual, you can advocate for more money, more support, more resources, more fun, more time. And it also means that you'll know how to advocate to yourself. Because ultimately, advocating is building belief. You build belief in your team. If you're a leader, you build belief in your prospects so that they can become customers or clients. And you have to build belief in yourself first. Today, we're going to get back to basics, and we're going to be talking about the 3 steps of advocating. Ultimately, what this really is, it's the 3 steps to asking for what you want and getting it, because that's what advocating is. It is building belief, it is overcoming doubts. And ultimately, when you do that, you can ask for what you want and get it over and over and over again. So the leader who wants the people who work at a certain office to return to office, they are advocating for returning to the office. When they build belief in their team that it's a good thing for the business and for them, they will ask them to return to office and they will return to office, asking for what they want and getting it. If you're in sales, you are building belief in your products and service so that then you can ask the prospect to become a client or a customer, and they will. You've asked for what you want and you've gotten it. If you are an individual who wants to get a raise or a promotion or resources or help, you ask for what you want and you get it. That is advocating. And it comes down always in every one of those situations and every other situation. If you're advocating for each other, advocating for a cause, no matter what it is, advocating for your children, advocating for your health, it comes down to these 3 steps that we're going to be discussing. The first step is knowing what you want. Number one, know what you want. The second step is ask for it out loud and with delight. And the third step is master the art of the ask. So let's take each one of these steps one by one. The first step is knowing what you want. Now, for those of you that are new here, my background is I was a trial attorney for over 20 years. I defended doctors in medical malpractice cases. Then I did a whole bunch of things. I became a mediator. I became a TV anchor. We'll talk about all that a little bit more today. And then I started this business where I help people like you become their own best advocates, whether they're leaders, salespeople, individuals, whatever the case may be. As a trial attorney, it was my job to advocate in the courtroom. It was my job to ask the jury to give me a win and get it. And in order to do that, I would have to build their belief and overcome their doubts. And so I knew exactly what it was that I wanted. I knew when I stood before that jury, I wanted them to give me a win. And so knowing what I wanted was not so much of an issue. And that might be true for you. If you're a leader and you know you want your team to return to the office, you know what you want. If you're a salesperson and you're meeting with a prospect, you know you want to turn that prospect into a client or a customer. So sometimes this first part is pretty well established. There's always work to be done, though. More clarity on what you want is always a big thing. But for this particular instance, I want to focus on individuals who say, I don't know what I want. I work with a lot of people one-on-one, and a lot of them are looking for new careers, new jobs. They are founders who are looking for investments. They are people who want to interview for a new role or a promotion. And sometimes they'll come to me and say, I'm not sure if I want this job or that one. I'm not sure if I want to stay here and get promotions or move to another place of work. I'm not sure if I want to start my own business or keep working in this particular business. And they can often be paralyzed because they don't know what they want. Here's the thing, knowing what you want is a skill. And the only way that we can get better at skills is to practice them. So you have to practice knowing what you want, and you have to be willing to sometimes be wrong. Just like when you learned to ride a bike, you had to practice riding the bike and you had to risk that you might fall off the bike. When you are practicing knowing what you want, you might get it wrong. It's not the end of the world. I'll take myself for an example. At first, I was a trial attorney. I was a successful trial attorney. I could have continued to be a trial attorney on the defense side forever, for my entire career. I knew I didn't want that anymore. There's a number of reasons that I didn't love being a defense attorney anymore. You're very constrained by the insurance companies that pay your bills. You bill in 6-minute increments. Sometimes the courtroom doesn't seem like the most fair place. So at first, I knew what I didn't want. That is not the easiest thing to advocate for. It's not easy to advocate when you are trying to advocate away from something. It's so much easier when you are advocating towards something, when you are moving towards something that you might love, that you might want, that you might be seeing as your purpose. And so I had to find that thing, because when I was trying to just step away from my current thing, I kept saying, I want help. That was not clear enough. It was not a real want. And so I took some time to figure out what I wanted. And at first, I decided that I wanted to be a mediator. Mediators are people that help, like in our cases, before we go to trial in front of a jury, we'll sometimes go to a mediator, and the mediator will try to help us resolve the case and settle the case. And I knew that I was a strong negotiator, and I knew that I might be a strong mediator. I have a psychology background. It would be a good fit. So I trained at the Strauss Institute, which is one of the premier educators of mediators and dispute resolution centers in the world. I trained there to be a mediator, and I enjoyed the training, but I found it to be boring. It takes a lot of patience to be a mediator. You have to be willing to wait for people to change their minds, and it's a lot of what we call shuttle diplomacy. I did not love it. It was not what I wanted. The next thing that happened was someone offered me the opportunity to do some legal analysis for TV. That was an opportunity that I jumped at, because when I was younger, I really thought I wanted to be a journalist. And so I thought I wanted to be a TV contributor and or anchor. And I started doing that work, and I loved it. So I wanted it even more. And now I felt pretty clear on what I wanted. And I was clear enough that I moved on to the next step, which was to ask for it with delight. And I asked Dan Abrams to give me a job as an anchor at the Law and Crime Network. He said yes. I advocated, I built belief, and I got what I wanted. And then I didn't want it anymore. After about a year, maybe longer, I found that that particular role, talking about rapes and murders all day, and for you true crime enthusiasts, you know what that's about. For me, that wasn't the best fit. So the thing that I wanted, I didn't want anymore. No big deal. Not the end of the world. I wanted something new. I knew that I wanted to do the work that I'm doing now. I wanted to take my psychology degree and my 20 years of experience in the courtroom and the mediation training and the anchor work, and combine them all to teach people how to advocate using the tools that I used in all of those roles, and specifically in the courtroom. So I started my business. I started my business. I started doing keynote speaking. I started doing coaching. I started writing my books. And now I am in a job, a career, an entrepreneurship, a business that I love. I love giving my keynote speeches and finding the people in the audiences come up to me and ask me to do more work with them to continue the ball rolling. I love seeing how they become such strong advocates and turn their clients and customers and team members into advocates. I love it. I love doing this podcast to give free content to help people like you to do this work. I love my membership, the Self Advocacy School, where we dive deeper and I coach people in a group on how they can become stronger advocates. I love this work. It is exactly what I want. But I didn't get from what I didn't want to here. It took wanting some things, exploring them, experimenting with them, and finding out that that wasn't exactly what I wanted. And each one of those things got me to where I am. I think way too often when it comes to this first step of knowing what you want, we're afraid to be wrong. We're afraid to try. And that's why sometimes it's important not to go all in with what you want. I was not someone who did the whole leap and the net will appear in this particular area of my life. I was more of, I call it the creep. I was still trying cases. I was still a full-time attorney when I was training as a mediator, when I started doing work as a mediator, when I was doing TV, and when I became a TV anchor. And even in the first few years of my business, I was creeping and testing and experimenting and keeping myself safe at the same time. So if you feel like, well, I don't know what I want and I'm afraid to know what I want, and you think that it is something that you have to get right, that's not the case. You need to be willing to experiment, to try something on for size and see how it fits. This is not skin that you're trying on for size, it's a jacket. And if the jacket doesn't fit, if it's not a good fit for you, you can try on a different jacket. So, that first step is knowing what you want, and you have to be willing to do a little bit of practice. The second step is asking for it out loud and with delight. Now, again, in business, this may be relatively easy. If you are a leader and you want your team to return to the office, you may be asking for it out loud. We'll get to the delight part in a minute. If you are in sales and you want your prospect to become a client or a customer, you hopefully are saying, would you like to buy this product? You are asking for it out loud. But sometimes we're not asking for it out loud. Sometimes the leader is not necessarily saying, we need you to return to the office 3 days a week. They're trying to dance around it. And oftentimes that's because they're not in delight yet. So we'll come back to that. For individuals, we're often not asking out loud. What I often see, especially with people that I coach one on one, is two different things. Sometimes they are asking their vision boards, they are asking their journals. They are trying to manifest. I am a big fan of manifesting. I'm into all the woo woo. But the truth of it is, if you want to get what you want, you have to ask the person who can give it to you. So, yes, put it on your vision board. See yourself doing that job. See yourself making that ask, and then make the ask. So, the first thing that I sometimes see is that people are not asking because they're trying to get around it, the hard part, by manifesting. The second thing that I see is that people think they're asking because they are giving what they wanted to receive. I coached a woman who really wanted an opportunity to work on a particular team. Rather than, this is before she worked with me, rather than just going in and asking, I would like to work on this team. What would I have to do? What evidence would you need in order for me to work on that team? She just kept giving more of the resources that that team needed to her boss. So she was doing extra work, work that was not on her in her lane, because she wanted to prove to her boss that she deserved this thing, but she wasn't asking for it. She was hanging around whenever the client would come into the office, hoping to be picked out of the crowd and chosen, but she wasn't asking to be chosen. And so it really is imperative that we ask out loud to the person who can give us the thing, and that we ask with delight. Now, delight is sort of a term that encompasses any type of positive energy. It could be with conviction. It could be with confidence. It could be with compassion. I like delight. I like the energy of delight, but ultimately it is about the energy with which you ask. The energy of delight is a very magnetic energy. The energy of fear, confusion, uncertainty, resentment, bitterness, those energies are not compelling at all and are going to make you much less likely to get the thing. So if you are a leader asking your team to return to the office and you're asking with frustration, or you're frustrated about returning to the office, so you're asking with anger or you're asking with disbelief, the people you're asking will feel that energy and you're much less likely to get what you want. If you are in full belief that the return to the office is going to serve you, going to serve the organization, and going to serve the individuals that you're asking, that energy will compel them to be more likely to say yes. The same thing in sales. If you truly believe in your product and service, and that your product and service can serve the people, the prospects in front of you, you will ask with delight and not confusion or frustration or resentment or discouragement or ennui, this feeling like I just don't care. And in personal relationships, this is really important. One of my worst relationships was one where at the beginning of the relationship, there was a lot of chaos. And because of that, I just kept giving what I wanted to receive. Isn't that how the golden rule works? Maybe it's my 12 years of Catholic school, but I thought if I give what I want, I will get it back. That is not the way it worked at all. I kept giving what I wanted. I was there when my partner needed me. When he asked for my support, I gave it. When he asked for resources, I gave them. When he asked for advice, I gave it. When he wanted me with him, I was there. And I expected that he would do the same for me. So, for example, I had to go to the hospital. I didn't ask him to come for a procedure. I assumed because I had put so much in the bank of giving that he would just offer. He didn't. And instead of asking, I told myself I'd be fine on my own. And I went on my own. And slowly, as more and more of these things happened, the resentment built up, the bitterness built up, the frustration built up. And then I didn't ask for anything. And when I did, I would ask with resentment, frustration, anger, disgust, and I never got what I wanted. Now the relationship was impossible and it had to end, and it did end. But in the meantime, I had some really unhappy times simply because I would not ask for what I wanted out loud and with delight. The reality of it was, if I could have asked with full belief, I deserve this thing, I want this thing, and me getting this thing is going to make our relationship better and make life better for you, then either he would have given it to me and the relationship may have done better, maybe, or he would have said no and we would have ended that relationship way sooner. So asking out loud and with delight is imperative if you want to be a strong advocate. So we've talked about you need to know what you want. You need to ask out loud and with delight. And then the last step is mastering the art of the ask. And this is where you get into the different juries. I often say that your jury is the people whose belief you want to build. They are the people whose doubts you have to overcome. They give you your wins. Your first jury is your inner jury. It's you. So knowing what you want often means persuading yourself to believe that you can have it, that you deserve it, that you can ask for it, and that it's something that's appropriate. It also means that you have to persuade yourself to believe in the ask so that you can ask with delight. So the first two are usually all about the inner jury. Mastering the art of the ask is your outer jury. Whose belief do you have to build to get the thing? For the leader, it's the team members who he or she wants to return to the office. For the salesperson, it's the prospects who they want to have buy their product. For the individual who wants a raise, it might be their manager and then the manager's manager, it might be a committee. You need to know who your jury is so that you can master the art of the ask. Next week, I'm going to talk about the 3 E's of an advocate. They are energy, evidence, and empathy. Mastering the art of the ask starts with the empathy piece. You've got to know your jury, see the world through their perspective, see your ask through their perspective so that you can collect the right energy and evidence that will speak to them. A lot of times, especially with my one-on-one work, but sometimes in my keynotes too, people want me to address presentation skills. And I can do that all day. I have been on television. I have been on Zoom. I have been an anchor. I have been in the courtroom. I have been across tables. I actually have been called in to teach people how to advocate across a negotiating table, on a stage, and on camera. I can do that. But the first thing that I always want to start with, the most important skill for an advocate, is not presentation skills. It's reception skills. It's listening, figuring out what it is that your jury wants and needs so that you can speak to what they want and need and show them how your ask is going to serve them and solve their problems and address their pain as well. So, mastering the art of the ask is a lot of seeing things from the other's perspective, speaking to that perspective. I often say when you communicate, you share perspectives. When you advocate, you change them. So, advocating often encompasses communicating. I need to know your perspective so that I can then speak to it in a way that makes you open to changing your belief or building your belief. When you put these 3 steps together, you can ask for almost anything and get it. It has worked for me time and time again. It has worked for my clients time and time again. Just today, before I recorded this podcast, I had a client who got a job that she initially told me she was not qualified for. I believed enough that she leaned on my belief until we had collected and created the evidence so that she believed. And now she is serving a new organization in such a way that she is going to knock their socks off. That is because she mastered the art of the ask. She learned how to know what she wanted, asked for it out loud and with delight, and mastered the art of the ask. These skills work in all the rooms. They work in boardrooms, operating rooms, classrooms, pitch rooms, sales rooms, even the bedroom. No matter what it is that you are advocating for, these 3 steps are how you do it. And you can learn to do it really well. And when you do, you become magic. you start to get to the point where you can say abracadabra, go through these 3 steps, and get the things that you want. This is the work that I help you to do in the Self Advocacy School. A lot of organizations are now interested in putting their team members into the school because they want people to learn these skills. I want you to learn these skills. If you're interested in joining us, we are closing the doors to the Self Advocacy School at the end of February. Those doors will remain closed until the spring. And when they reopen, it's going to be at a higher price point with a few less perks. So if you want to be a founding member of the Self Advocacy School, now is the time. There's a link to join in the bio. This podcast is also going to help you to learn these skills. Next week, we're going to be talking about the 3 E's of an advocate. Again, energy, evidence, and empathy. But for today, walk away thinking about which of these 3 steps are you going to focus on this week? Are you going to focus on knowing what you want and being willing to practice that skill? Are you going to focus on asking out loud and with delight? Or are you going to focus on mastering the art of the ask? I would love to hear from you. You can always email me, heather@elegantwarrior.com, with feedback on the podcast. I would love to have your reviews, and I would love for you to subscribe to this podcast. I make this podcast out of so much love for you, the listener, and I want to make sure that I am giving you what you need. So please advocate for yourself. If you want a specific topic, if you want a specific thing addressed, let me know and I will address it for you. In the meantime, have a great week. Have a great weekend. Put these steps to use. Let me know how they go. And please take good care. I will see you next week.